Hello. Hello out there. Thanks for being here. I am Heidi, and this is this week's live stream. We're talking about when someone says, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but, right? That came up in a comment on my latest YouTube video about someone texting me, that's disappointing. And hey, Emily, how are you? Uh, the whole transaction through that situation. I shouldn't say transaction, but how that situation played out. And someone commented on that video and said what really gets them is when someone says, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but oh great, I'm glad you're doing good. Um, because for those of us that have tried to keep other people happy in our lives, right? That we have people pleased and that we're afraid of disappointing someone. That type of statement can really send us for a little bit of a loop down a rabbit hole, if you will. And I have a poll. I see that some people have voted already. Hi, Gina. Welcome. Thanks for being here. So I have a poll, and we have 50% get defensive or shut down, 25% feel guilty instantly, and 25% wonder what they did wrong. So those are common reactions, right? When we hear those words, it's kind of like someone saying, I know guys hate this from a woman more, right? We need to talk, right? It instantly like gets our defenses up or gets us ruminating. And oh, first, can you hear me through here? I'm assuming you can, because nobody's saying I can't hear you. I'm hoping that it's coming through this microphone. So if somebody could give me a thumbs up or tell me that it is, that would be great. I'm trying to get this whole thing figured out. So if we have put other people first all our lives, and then someone says, I don't mean to make you feel guilty, but right, we start thinking about, okay, what did I do wrong? What's coming next? What's going to happen? Is there going to be a confrontation? Okay, Emily, thanks. um and right, we go into all these places. So I want to talk about those type of statements, what we can do about them, what we can say in response, how we can keep ourselves calm, and also talk about that sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean that someone is trying to manipulate you. So I want to give you some examples of um, when that is, like why someone might say that who is not being manipulative. But a lot of times, what happens is for those of us that have spent years people pleasing, right? We can swing from absorbing guilt, which is usually where we've been, right? And then trying to break free of that people pleasing, it's easy to swing the pendulum to the very opposite side and say, oh, they're just being manipulative. And start pointing the finger that everybody's trying to manipulate us. And I know I can relate to that. When I started setting boundaries and started looking at the behaviors that I had about myself, I started feeling like everybody else suddenly became almost like the enemy, like that they were out to get me or to take advantage of me. And I think it's just maybe part of the process because I had been on one side of the pendulum for so long about just overlooking everything that then suddenly everything seemed to be, you know, an affront to me. So eventually getting back down or swinging in the middle somewhere is much better, realizing that sometimes people speak without thinking about what they're saying, and they're not necessarily wanting to be manipulative or meaning to be manipulative, but until we communicate with them that that's how it felt, then they possibly don't ever get the information that, "Oh, that came across differently than what I wanted it to." So we're gonna talk about the 2 different ways or reasons that people could say that and what 2 different, like, opposite things that that could actually mean. Now we have 60% of get defensive or shut down. For those of you that voted that way, is it one or the other? Or could it be sometimes you get defensive or sometimes you shut down? Or is getting defensive actually mean that you're shutting down? If you could put that in the chat, just to clarify, what what are you sensing? Do you get defensive and angry, or do you get defensive and emotional, like teary? That was me. I would get really teary and like I would just shrink. So I would love to know what how that how that feels for you. So again, people pleasers are conditioned to interpret someone else's disappointment or them, you know, saying something like this as something that we need to fix. We need to fix that. So, again, we're going to talk about, is this manipulative? Are they actually using guilt to influence you and your actions, your reactions, how you will behave next time? Or is this person expressing a legitimate feeling or need? They just aren't expressing it in the best way. Hi, RW. You get defensive. Anytime a phrase is prefaced with, I don't mean to, I immediately think that, oh, yes, you do. Right. Um, Emily says, I feel guilty first, then I get defensive or shut down, depending on the situation. Okay. I would love RW to know then what happens when you think, oh, yes, you do. Then do you speak out? Does it turn into an argument? Do you, do you speak up or do you walk away thinking, oh, yes, you do? So, again, the goal here is to become better at distinguishing information. Like maybe somebody would say that, and I'm going to talk about these, but maybe someone would say that because they're hurt and they just don't know how to communicate. Or are they saying it from obligation? Like, I have to change my decision in order for them to feel better, right? So the goal is to figure out which which is which. And usually you can tell if it's someone that you have a relationship with, you can tell from their intent. And this is basically self leadership, right? Like self control, figuring out and making decisions based on your values, not on someone else's emotional discomfort. So, my ex husband used to do this. He would say, can I ask you a question without you getting mad? And I, a lot of times, because I knew him well enough, right, to know that he was about to say something that was maybe hard for him to say, or that he was going to blame me for doing something, but he didn't know how to communicate it without it being blame, but that's called a double bind where you can't win, right? That question, can I ask you something and you promise you won't get mad? It's like, well, which way is it, right? It puts the person being asked the question in a situation that is basically a no-win for them. Because if you say yes and then it's something hurtful, you promised you wouldn't get mad, right? Or if it's something that truly is um like could make you angry, or that is oh, what's the word? A little bit like emotionally abusive, then they've set you up to, and I'm not saying he did that, that's not him, but they're setting you up then to say, "You said you wouldn't get mad. You said I could tell you what I wanted to tell you." Right? So they people can get us in this double bind situation where we can't win. And I started to say to him, just ask me, just say what you want to say. I'm not going to promise that it won't upset me, because I didn't want to commit to not showing my emotions or not feeling my emotions if it was something upsetting. So let's go back though and talk about some of the more innocent and well-intentioned reasons that someone might be saying that. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but and they could say other things, right? Like, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, or I'm not trying to whatever, right? You fill in the blank. RW, maybe I've had too many passive aggressive people in my past and I'm jaded. My younger self always capitulated. My ex was a master at pushing buttons, and when I reacted, then I was the one to blame. Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like you are a people pleaser, that you always put other people first, made sure that their well-being was, good, that they were happy, that they weren't uncomfortable, or that they weren't mad or upset? Um, because that type of behavior, which was me 100%, didn't want to disappoint anybody. And so I always wore this mask to be whatever the other person wanted me to be. That behavior, that type of codependent behavior, attracts passive aggressive people. They're just magnets, because those people know that they can take advantage of us because we won't push back. And so what you said doesn't surprise me. It's not it's not like those people, those passive aggressive people won't stick around in people's lives, people that have boundaries. They just won't stick around because they aren't getting their emotional fuel met, or their tank filled from this control aspect with people who have boundaries. Emily said, I feel guilty about other things as well that isn't related to this topic. I can always say it in a comment on a video. Okay, yeah, absolutely. And a, I don't know, obliger? Is that what you meant? I have never seen that word written, obliger. I know when I said it out loud what it meant. So you are always, you know, obliging other people, like you are the one acquiescing to them and backing down, making sure that they're okay. A difficult childhood trains us to be obligers, to avoid any attention. Absolutely. It becomes, yeah, a safety, right? It's protection. So now as adults, so that got programmed in when we were young. And I don't recognize your name from past lives, but I've talked about this many times, that we're basically blank computers, right? When we're born. And everything we experience, um, outright or subliminally, the things we're told, again, outright or subliminally, Those all go in as the software that runs the computer. And so then, if we haven't investigated those things, we grow up to be adults thinking that we're shy or we're not good at math or that we're not worthy, we're not deserving of love, we're not good enough, whatever it is, right? That is just the program. It's not actually who you are. And so that is that's my mission, is to help people not be the obliger anymore, right? Not feel like your role here is to be obligated to meet other people's needs. That's not your role. Yes, if you're in a relationship, right, it's a two-way street, but it's not always you backing down. Um, Emily said, I don't like to be the center of attention either. Yeah, I mean, this all is wrapped up into basically the software that makes you you. But again, just like software on my computer, right? I can reprogram it. I can download new software. I can take off the software that's so old that doesn't serve me anymore and put in new software. And that's my mission here, is to help you figure out what are the patterns that are just running on autopilot, because 95% of our life is autopilot. It's run on the programs that are already downloaded in you, in your subconscious. So if those programs aren't serving you, if you don't like attracting passive aggressive people, then let's figure out what is causing you, what behaviors and beliefs, more importantly, beliefs, do you have that is causing you to attract these passive aggressive people? I would guess that you have a belief about yourself, like you said, from childhood, that you need to, that you're not good enough, that you're not deserving. There's we hold all sorts of beliefs. The belief, the fear of being rejected is a huge one for most people. And if you had a difficult childhood, right, where you were always acquiescing and avoiding attention just to protect yourself, then the fear of rejection is probably very present for you. As kids, we don't have the capability to go off and live on our own, right? We are reliant on our caregivers to feed us and to clothe us and to protect us. But sometimes it doesn't happen in the way that is most beneficial. So that's what I would look at. What are the beliefs below the surface level of the water? Like, if you think about an iceberg, it's not the tip of the iceberg, it's what's underneath the surface level of the water. And that iceberg is huge under the water. What we see is just a tiny fraction of the full iceberg. So, what are the beliefs that you have about yourself? Because those beliefs are driving your behavior. There's no other way around it. So, there are more well intentioned or more innocent um, reasons that people might say this. One would be maybe to soften the message, to reduce the sting. Um, Similar to someone saying, like, this might be hard to hear. Maybe they're about to say something that is painful or sensitive. And so they're trying to reassure you before they express disappointment or hurt. Right? So that isn't necessarily manipulative. It's just not the best way to start a conversation, right? Um, Another thing is, maybe, again, this kind of goes along with it, but they're feeling hurt and they don't know a better way to express it. So instead of saying, I felt disappointed when you canceled, right? They use this indirect language to communicate that pain. And as people pleasers, I think we do this a lot too. We are a little bit passive aggressive in the way that we communicate. I know that I have thought, well, they should just know how I feel, right? They should know that that hurt me. And so we use this, this roundabout way to communicate versus just communicating clearly. I feel hurt when you do XYZ. I felt hurt when you canceled with little notice, right? Whatever it is, versus this might make you feel guilty, starting it off that way, it just sets it up for a really uncomfortable conversation, more uncomfortable. But what's happening is we don't want to feel the discomfort, so we put it on them. And now I'm kind of turning things around. I'm saying that we're communicating that way, right? But when someone says, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but what they're saying is, I'm not comfortable enough to just say this outright. So I'm going to put that discomfort on you so that I feel better about what I'm saying. RW, I'd love to know what your first name is if you're willing to share it. Fear of rejection is primary. Exclamation point. Everything you said is spot on. Yeah. I hear you. I understand. I've been there and I've worked with a lot of people in helping, clear up these patterns, because these patterns are just screwing with us big time. Re, is that how you say it? Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So, another like well-intentioned or more innocent reason is they're afraid of conflict. And as people pleasers, we can definitely relate to that, right? Um, and I'm curious to know, have you ever said, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but right, to kind of pussyfoot around what you're about to say? But being afraid of conflict could be a reason that we say something like this. Get defensive or shut down is still 50%. Then the next is feel guilty instantly. But I'm curious to know, have any of you here listening still, have you ever said, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but have you started a conversation that way? I certainly have. I certainly have, before I realized what I was actually doing, that I was putting that discomfort on them. I was giving them my discomfort because I was afraid to say whatever it was I needed to say outright. And part of that was because I hated conflict. I didn't want someone upset with me. I didn't want to disappoint someone. So people want to express a need or frustration, but they are worried that you'll become defensive. And again, maybe you've been on the other side of this, and Ree says yes. I'm not sure if you're answering that question, or if I'm saying your name right. Yes. Another way is that they've just learned this as a communication style growing up. Maybe their family didn't communicate directly, right? Maybe people skirted around issues. I know I didn't learn this growing up. I didn't learn to say, I felt hurt or I felt disappointed when this thing happened. I never learned to name my emotions. I never learned to, um, I was taught to suppress my emotions. So this could be just a way, an innocent way that people are communicating. I don't mean to make you feel bad, or I don't mean to make you feel guilty, right? They just don't know another way to communicate. And it's just their default way of expressing themselves. They don't realize they're doing it. But let's now talk about the more maybe likely thing, um, is the manipulative side of it or the self-protective side of it. This involves influencing you while avoiding ownership themselves, right? You've probably all felt this. They want you to feel guilty so that they don't have to take responsibility. And this is like probably the prime example of guilt tripping. They can later say then, well, I wasn't trying to make you feel guilty, even though the message was designed to make you feel guilty. Has this happened to you? Or again, have have you done this to someone else? This for a people pleaser probably isn't as common of a way that we would use it because we never want to hurt someone, right? We never want to disappoint someone. So that's probably not necessarily something that most people pleasers would do is try to produce guilt in someone else. Another thing is maybe they're trying to influence your future behavior through this guilt. So instead of making a direct request like, I'd love it if you could come next time, or if you're going to be late, I would love for you to text me, right? Or, something like that. Instead of, well, I don't mean to make you feel bad, but that was super insensitive that you didn't text me or that you didn't come to my party or whatever it was. So they hope that the guilt will motivate you next time to make a different choice. And that's manipulative, right? If someone's doing that, and again, sometimes people don't realize that they're doing it. So I'm not saying that they're outright purposefully manipulating you. But if you recognize this pattern in a person doing it over and over, then, right, like what's the saying? Like, let's call the spots black. I don't think that's the right saying. If it looks like a zebra, whatever the saying is. But right, we have to start being more discerning. And as people pleasers, that is one of our that as people, being discerning is one of our superpowers, but as people pleasers, this is something that we do not use. And the reason why we don't use discernment is because we confuse it with judgment. And judgment to a people pleaser is bad. That is us being bad, like doing something wrong. To judge someone else is not condoned behavior, right? When we were taught to be nice. I'm not saying we all judge. Everybody judges, right? It's part of being human to judge. But discerning is totally different than judging. Being discerning is saying, wait a minute, this keeps happening with the same person, right? That's discernment. That is seeing what's the definition of discernment? Discernment, meaning it's the mental or spiritual ability to judge things well, accurately separate truth from falsehood, accurately separate truth from falsehood and make sound decisions. It involves looking past what is superficial to grasp the deeper underlying reality of a situation. So some examples is like decision making, going beyond a simple yes or no to figure out the best or most moral course of action, recognizing motives, hidden nuances, or underlying feelings in people. So being discerning is your ability to use your intuition to tell you, is this harmful to me or is this helpful to me? Right? Is this person serving me in my life? Like, are they uplifting me, or overall, are they diminishing me? So that's being discerning, not necessarily, it's not the person, it's the behavior, right? That you're discerning, wait, is this harmful or is it healthy? So hopefully that clarified a little bit of that. So again, thinking about, is this someone who constantly does this, or is this a one-off, right? Is this something that just they were having a bad day and they communicated? But 10 bad days, right, every day in a row is not one bad day, right? That's using discernment. Is this a pattern with this person? And then making a decision from there. Um, Another manipulative or like self-protective, they're trying to manage their own self-image. They don't want to see themselves as someone who guilt trips. So they preface the statement with denial. I don't mean to make you feel guilty, right? That's someone who uses it in that way is guilt tripping, but they're saying it in a way that makes them feel like, or makes them, they think, be perceived as someone who doesn't guilt trip people, who's not manipulative. And then maybe they're testing your empathy. This depends on how it's done. If it's simply hoping that you'll understand their feelings, that can be healthy. But if they're repeatedly checking whether you'll prioritize their emotions over your own, that becomes emotionally manipulative. If they're constantly saying, I don't mean for this to sound bad, or I don't mean to make you feel guilty, or I don't mean to, right? If they preface statements with something like that a lot, and then you say, oh, it's okay, or, oh, I don't, you back down, um, right? You get defensive or shut down, right? Instead of staying in your own power, in your own agency, you acquiesce or do something, they start to, and this is what toxic people will do, they start to realize, oh, this is a person who I can take advantage of their empathy. And that is the type of person that I married. So I completely understand that type of behavior. So what can we do? There are a few statements that I wrote down that we can just simply say. If it's someone that is repeatedly doing this to you, I would encourage you to practice one of these statements, or come up with one that you're comfortable with. Instead of getting defensive or backing down, we need to set boundaries. And walking away is a boundary. It's not, that is not mean. It's not, but if someone's being aggressive or taking advantage or trying to manipulate you, walking away is a boundary that speaks volumes if you can hold it, right? But a lot of times, as people pleasers, we can tend to back down. But I have some just really simple statements. If someone says to you, I don't mean to make you feel bad, or I don't mean to make you feel guilty, you can say, which is what I started saying to my ex, and those were two, I talked about two different exes. This one was not toxic. He just didn't communicate, and we both were not very emotionally intelligent, and, we were younger, and we didn't have, because neither one of us had the examples growing up of people communicating clearly. So when he would say, um, "Do you promise that you won't get mad when I tell you this?" I would start saying to him, "If you want to tell me something, tell me. I'm not going to diminish my feelings or pretend like I don't feel hurt if what you're going to say is hurtful." So you can just simply say, if you have a request, ask me directly, right? Don't allow yourself to get into that double bind situation like I did until I realized what was happening. Because then he would ask me, or he would say something that was super hurtful. And I promised that I wouldn't be hurt. Well, that's not fair. That's asking somebody to not feel their feelings, right? To suppress their feelings. And if you've listened to me before, that is emotional constipation when we suppress our feelings. And just like when you're physically constipated, you're building up toxins inside of your body. Emotional constipation does the same thing. I just had somebody yesterday comment on that same video about being disappointed that she people pleased all her life, and she was recently diagnosed with MS, which is an autoimmune disease. Dr. Gabor Mate talks about 80% of all autoimmune diseases occur in women. And why is that? Because women typically are more apt to be the people pleasers than men are. We're the caregivers, we're the nurturers, we're the ones that are taught to be nice, not to express our emotions, to not express healthy anger, right? Push it down, just suppress it, become emotionally constipated. And those things he has found through research, 80% of all autoimmune diseases are occurring in women because of people pleasing. So we need to start speaking up. If you have put other people first all your life, made sure that they're happy, I want you to start speaking up for yourself. And if you want support in doing that, I offer one-on-one coaching, or you can join my Inner Circle membership. I have some great videos in there that are deeper dive videos. It's only $6 a month, but it will help you reveal patterns. There is a blind spot breakthrough quiz that you can take that's quite comprehensive in attached to one of those videos that will help you see where these patterns are occurring most often for you. It's $6 a month. You can join for a month and watch the videos that are in there now and then unsubscribe or stay for a year. I would love to support you further inside of that membership. Um, you can also say, like, if they seem upset, I understand you're upset, but I don't want to make decisions based on guilt or feeling bad or from this place, right? So if you can communicate directly with me, I'll stay in this conversation. Another thing you can say is, and this kind of goes along with it, and just another way to say it, I'm willing to talk about the situation, but not if the goal is to make me feel bad or to make me feel guilty, right? So those are just some things. And I encourage you to write them down, go back and listen to the replay and write those down. Put them on your mirror so that so subliminally they start to go in. Or you can stand in your mirror while you're brushing your teeth and say them. Because another comment yesterday that I got was, someone said, I shut down in the moment, I don't know what to say. And that's because we haven't practiced it, right? And I've said many times, we have to do the reps. So you can fumble with it, right? But unless you go to the gym and actually go in and lift the weights, you won't build that strength. You won't build that muscle. So you have to start practicing. Even if you practice with a friend, right? You can do role playing or just when this comes up, I don't mean to make you feel bad. Like, okay, breathe. Jefferson Fisher, who wrote a book called The Next Conversation, he talks about before you respond, before you do anything, take a breath. And he actually, in his book, talks about physically how to take this breath through your nose only, because you have to breathe slower when you breathe through your nose. So in and out only through your nose. So if someone says that to you, I don't mean to make you feel bad, but, and then they say whatever they're going to say, or they're waiting for you to respond, just take a deep breath in through your nose. Deep breath back out through your nose. That calms your brain, because what happens is the the front part of your brain, the decision making part of your brain shuts down as soon as you like feel your defenses rising, or you start going into shutdown, you start feeling guilty, that decision making part of the brain shuts down, and you can't think. So breathing that way, just it takes 2 seconds, allows the brain to stay calmer and allows you to think. Because what happens when our brain shuts down, our nervous system shuts down. We go into fight or flight just like that. Blood goes away from the brain. It goes out to the limbs, to the arms and the legs, so that we can fight or flee, right? We can run away. So the blood is needed in our limbs in order to protect ourselves. But this isn't a situation where you physically have to fight or flee, right? But the brain doesn't know that. The brain thinks, holy crap, alert, alert, as soon as you allow yourself to go into defense mode or shutdown mode or guilt mode, like I did something wrong. So if you can stop it or slow it down by taking in that breath, right? It may not shut it down completely, but it will slow down that fight or flight, that that it will it will slow down you going into fight or flight, so that you can stay in the conversation, and so that you can think, oh, what was that saying? Oh, if you have a request, just ask me directly, right? Whatever your saying is, figure out one that feels best to you. So again, it can be easy for those of us who've spent years people pleasing to swing from absorbing this guilt and just taking it on, acquiescing, shutting down, um, being compliant, right? To thinking that everybody's being manipulative. So again, I want you to use your discernment. Is this someone who does this to me a lot? Right? Like Ree said, oh, bye, Emily. She probably already left. Um, like Ree said, we become obligers, right? But now that you're seeing it, we can start thinking that everybody is being manipulative, when maybe um, they're just having a bad day. But using your discernment, is this someone that does this to me a lot? Are they passive aggressive a lot in the way they communicate? Or is this a one-off? Right? And that's the way to know. So that is what I have for you today. Get defensive or shut down is 60%. Feel guilty instantly is 30%. And wonder what I did wrong is 10%. Oh, we just got a change in the votes. 64% get defensive or shut down. 27% feel guilty instantly, and 9% wonder what I did wrong. So I appreciate you being here. Um, Ree, it was nice to meet you. I appreciate you being here. I go live typically every Wednesday at 2:22 Eastern time. Today I had to switch schedule just a little bit. So I appreciate you coming in. I hope to see you next Wednesday. And if there's anything that you would like me to talk about in these lives, I would love for you to put it in the chat. Hello, RH. We are just finishing. I appreciate you being here, but you can watch the replay shortly and vote in the poll if you haven't voted real quick while it's still up. I think the chat stays live for 5 minutes after the live stream ends, so you can still vote in the poll. Thank you so much, Ree. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you are enjoying the videos, and I appreciate you being here. Again, if there's anything that you want me to cover, just like this person, this was a comment that someone made that they really struggled with when people say to them, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but right, that just sends them into a spiral and it triggers them. So if you have something you want me to talk about, please, let me know in a comment of a video. Again, my inner circle membership is there for anybody that wants to go into deeper dive. And I am live here every Wednesday at 2:22 p.m. Eastern time. Today was just a one-off at a different time. So again, have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you in next week's live stream or in the comments of videos.